Alright friends, welcome back to Build a Lot Acres. My name's Case. Today's video, we're going to continue on with the firewood series. We're going to talk about different ways to store your wood and what I consider the best. Let's go. This is the fourth video in this firewood series. It's going to get people acquainted with firewood, basic principles, guidelines, things you really should know as a wood burner, because I think it's going to get more popular with prices of oil. I know I keep saying it in every video, but people haven't watched my other videos on this series. They need to know that information. So this is just a good general guideline, and there's different topics in every video, and I'm going to link them at the end of the video. So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about different ways to store your wood. There's a lot of ways. I've done them pretty much all, and I can tell you right now which one I think is the best, but I'm going to tell you that at the end of the video. So let's start off with the worst way you could store your wood, absolutely worst. Throwing it in a loose pile directly in the ground. That's terrible for a number of reasons. It looks like crap. It's going to take up a lot of space because it takes up a much bigger footprint than neatly stacked wood. It's not going to be as high. It's not going to season very well. Your air and wind aren't going to get to the center of the pile. You might get, the edges or the top of the pile, but the center stuff is all going to stay wet, moist. It's going to harbor rodents, bugs. You're just not going to work, and you're going to absorb groundwater and moisture from the ground. So you're really never going to get it very dry. It's always going to be wet. It's going to rot out. It's just a terrible idea, and I highly recommend not throwing your wood in a loose pile. What's the next way? The next way would be, so like I said, I'm going to do this in order of my least favorite to favorite. The next two ways are actually kind of tied for me, but I'm going to say the next best way would probably be putting it in an open stack. Now that's going to typically just be, nothing supporting it, no walls, no roof, nothing like a woodshed behind me, just open stacks. However, now I've done takeaways in all these firewood series I think so far. If you don't remember anything else in the video, remember this one thing. You want to keep the wood off the ground, whether that be by pallets, runners, blocks, I don't care how you do it. Keep the wood off the ground. No matter how you store your wood outside, you're going to have much better results. But back to the open stacks. The problem with the open stacks that I've found is you can only go so high before they tend to tip over. I seem to get up to about 5 feet and then they want to tip. I haven't had much luck going higher than that. And the stacks are nice because they don't cost a lot of money, really any money, other than maybe some runners or pallets or something from the bottom. I would recommend using plastic pallets. You can do whatever you want. Wood pallets are usually free, but they do rot out eventually. Plastic pallets do not, and they don't leave nails behind to give you flat tires. But you could also make runners out of small trees. I've done that. So there's a number of ways that you can do open stacks, and that's going to be the next best way, in my opinion. So the next way we're going to talk about is going to be open stacks with support. That's going to mean most likely a wall in the back, maybe some end panels. I think that way is a little better because it's easier to stack against, and it allows you to stack it a little higher than just the regular open stacks. Now, on the topic of open stacks, I think it's important to note, do not cover the sides of your wood. You want the wind to be able to blow through. You want the sun to hit that. And if you cover the whole thing with, say, a tarp or plastic, it's just going to harbor moisture, and it's really never going to dry out. So if you do open stacks, make sure you only cover the top. Leave the sides open. But that's going to be the next way, is going to be open stacks with top cover and a back, back, maybe some ends. So the next way I would say is going to be IBC totes. Now this is a little more controversial. I kind of debated whether I should put this ahead or below stacks. So I really like the IBC totes for a number of reasons. The IBC totes are easier to move around. So say you fill up 20 totes, you can drive them over with your tractor, skid steer, whatever, however you're going to move them. You can drive them over to your house and unload them, or just leave them there until you need them. Whereas open stacks, you're going to put it in a trailer, truck, pickup bed, whatever you're putting it in. So it's much less touching of the wood. You might have 2 or 3 touches for an IBC container. You might have 5 or 6 touches when you're doing a woodshed or open stacks. Another nice thing about the IBC cages is it's easy to separate out your types of wood. So you might have all black locust in this one, all red oak in that one, all cherry in that one, all hickory in that one, etc., etc. So it's easy to separate them out. And I think the next benefit to the IBC cages is they're a nice easy target for a day's work. You can pick 1, 2, 3 cages. That's your goal for that afternoon after work. You might have an hour of free time, 2 hours, whatever. Fill up 1 or 2 or 3 cages. It's quick, it's easy, it makes you feel like you accomplished something, whereas a big open stack, it's never ending, and you really don't get that sense of accomplishment like you do the IBC cages. But there are negatives to them too, which I would say the biggest one is you need a machine that's pretty capable to pick them up. The IBC cages, full of fresh cut wood, are about 1/3 of a cord depending on what size cage you have. They come in 275 gallon and 330 gallon, the 2 most common sizes. But you're talking, you could be talking 2,000 pounds of wood in an IBC cage, freshly cut. So you could have a pretty substantial machine to pick that up, whether it be a bobcat or a tractor. So that's probably one of the biggest negatives, is you do need a machine. You don't have to use a machine, but you can't really move them once they're full other than with a machine. And I would say the other negative is going to be the cost. They used to be really cheap. A lot of people will say they get them for free. That's not the case in Massachusetts. The cheapest I've ever found them was $20 a cage, and that was only if you bought 20 cages. So, think about it, 1/3 of a cord. A lot of people burn 5, 6, 7, 8 cords, so you need a lot of cages to do your whole year's worth of wood, and you also need a lot of space to stack them, because you really don't want them right up tight to each other. You want spaces so you can drive in, pick it up, move around, the wind can get through, etc., etc. So I would say the cost and needing a machine are probably the biggest negatives to the IBC cages. But let's get into the best way, in my opinion, to store your wood. And it's sitting right behind me, woodshed. I think this is the absolute best way. Like I said, I've tried other ways. I do use the IBC cages for some of my wood, but I don't have enough to do all my wood. I burn 8 cords a year. And I just think the woodshed looks the best when you get a nice snowstorm and it's covered with snow and you can see that wood wall facing you, and you got all that heat stored up, ready to heat your house. It's really a nice feeling. It looks visually nice. It could almost be a postcard in a lot of cases. And you can make the woodshed customizable to how much wood you need. This one holds 8 cords, which is what I burn a year. And you can make it wider, taller, longer, shallower, whatever you want to do, whatever style roof you want. And it is going to cost a little bit of money to build it. For me, I don't know exactly how much on this. It wasn't a ton, but it would be a lot cheaper now if I did it with the sawmill. It wouldn't hardly cost me anything other than my time. But I think a woodshed is got to be the best way to store your wood. Let me know if you agree in the comments. I hope you guys are enjoying this firewood series. Check out our other videos in the firewood series, and I'll see you guys next time.